Shut up and sit down.
Me help you.
Hi, Sharon, thought I'd give you a ring. It crossed my mind, so now I'm wondering if you're not settled in. You might like to meddle in some adrenaline pumping, pedaling.
Oh, dolls, I thought you'd never ask. I'd love to get my hand behind some handlebars.
You are listening to another episode of the Dialed Podcast with Matt Legrand, Evan Price, Lance Hepler, and Jake Von During. The guys blabber on about themselves, talk to someone else about some stuff, and finish by blabbering just a little more. There you go, the show in a nutshell. Tip of the day, talk does not cook rice, so quit yapping and get to it already.
You can watch me whoosh by on my push back, my tush high and my thighs bumping away. Seems like a sweet deal, less than 3 wheels, yet I still steal the show from your Camry. On my bicycle, life was icicle, but now I'm cruising with the grace of a manta ray. Run the whole game from my own lane, hail or rain off the chain. Yeah, you know that I'm a cycler.
Going round, 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 round. Going round, 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 round. Going round.
I immediately regret this decision.
All right, welcome back to the Dial Podcast. I'm Jake Von During. I'm here with Lance Epler.
Lance Romance here for your viewing pleasure. Let's go.
And it is a pleasure.
It is a pleasure.
Here's right, Matt Legrand.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen of the internet? You guys are looking fantastic today.
And not here today,
You know
Evan
what's
Price.
Not here, but you know who's looking good? Jake with those burns.
Oh, you like those?
Are razor sharp.
Those are nice.
Razor sharp. That's what I'm looking for.
Race
Wait,
jersey.
Let's see how you're looking, Lance.
Race jersey.
I've got the same.
Not bad.
Mine are not bad.
They're not great.
They're not.
Save that for the back pedal.
Oh, okay.
Matt, how are you?
I'm hanging in there.
Fan
Hanging in
freaking-tastic like usual?
Yeah, fan freaking-tastic. My wife's been out of town. In fact, she got home directly before I
Buzzed over here?
buzzed over here. Yeah, it was one of those things where it's like, I'm going to be an extra 10 minutes late because I got to at least say hi to my wife. She's been gone for the weekend. I had the kids for the weekend, so I didn't get out for a ride. I literally ran up and down my street so I could
I saw that.
get a run in. Yeah, I do that all the time. And that's my watching kids exercise. So, yeah, not great.
Hey, tell me the shirt you got. It looks like a Zwift profile. Is that what that is?
It's an interval workout.
I know, but it looks
I
like
love
something
that.
you would see on Zwift. But anyhow, did you make that? Is that you?
I did not.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I like it.
Okay, so you can get this shirt if you go and check out my friend's YouTube channel. It's called, Smart Indoor Bike Training. I'll double check the name, but it's a cool channel, and
Yeah.
he does all indoor cycling discussions on YouTube. Really great channel.
Love it.
And I do need to double
Is
check
that
the
a
name.
sweet spot
That's
workout?
a sweet spot workout.
Yeah, this is a sweet spot workout. And yeah, he's just a cool person. He has very high quality content. I bet you've seen his channel before. It's excellent. He reviews trainers and talks about Zwift and talks about like computers that work well for things like that. And I'll double check the name of his channel and make sure that it's plugged on the podcast for
Excellent.
him.
Sweet.
So, yep.
Cool. So that's your back pedal?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Swam some, biked some at some point, I'm sure.
We're trying to go fast so we can
Go.
get as much of Matt Legrand today as we possibly can.
Go. Move forward.
We got somebody in the background making a little noise over
That's
here.
okay.
Cranking on some bikes, but it's all good.
Yeah,
It's a
we
bike shop, kind of. Lance, back pedal.
I did not race this week. I had planned to go race up in Washington, but I had a conversation with my neurosurgeon, and he shut me down for a couple weeks.
Uh-oh.
So
How did you respond to that?
I ended up just riding like 100 miles this week instead of 250.
Smart Bike Trainers, plural, is the YouTube channel.
Bike
Okay.
trainers?
Trainers. Yeah, I want to get it right.
So yeah, he basically told me your back is not healing up. You need to give it a chance to rest, and so I just cut out all intensity. I didn't go to the flogging ride. I didn't go to the race. It's just there's a big race I want to do in 2 weeks, the Sister Stampede, and so I'm hoping that I can heal up enough to do well at that.
Good.
So
Are you doing indoor riding or something? Like, how are you just going out on the road and you're going easy?
I'm just going out on the road.
You
and
ride with me, buddy.
Going easy.
You ride with me.
Yeah.
I could help you keep it easy.
I did one ride where it was like 100 under 115 heart rate and under 200 watts, which was very hard for me to do.
Yeah.
And I rode once with Jake, and we
went harder than that.
We buzzed around the city a little bit, but we really took
I
it easy.
chirped at him probably about a good half
Yes.
dozen times. Hey,
There's a problem. My legs feel great.
Yeah,
My
bet.
legs feel great.
Yeah.
But if I do too much, I can't stand up straight or walk.
Okay.
well, stand up straight or walk when you're riding a bike.
That's true. I know. I don't feel it on the bike at all. That's the worst part about it.
Yeah.
is I don't
And
feel it on the bike.
You think the bike is aggravating it though?
Yeah, I think the intensity is aggravating it.
Okay.
I need it to heal. So he put me on a.
Does it matter if you're doing like, I should avoid mountain biking, or like, are there certain things that are going to be easier than others, or it's just
No.
intensity?
He's a neurosurgeon who doesn't ride a bike. He says, take a
ride.
break.
Yeah.
And I said, what does that mean? He says, don't ride your bike. And I'm like, you don't understand.
Right. Yeah. No, I've dealt with that my whole life. Why don't you try not running? I've heard that so many
Wait a
times.
second. You know,
Yeah.
mentally I will fall apart. I will implode if I just stop. I can't do that.
That's how I started triathlon. A doctor was like, take
Stop
a break.
running.
Just try a break from running. I was like, I'll give it 3 months off. And it didn't help. But
Yeah.
Doctors. Know-it-all doctors.
So that's me.
Okay.
Jake,
I had a decent week.
You did?
I had about almost 11 hours on the bike this week, which not
That's
too
good.
shabby. Not too shabby for me. And we had a fun flogging ride. It was a really big
You're
group.
coming in hot in that elementary school. I almost scolded you. You're like, this is an elementary school.
he was sprinting
I was
for that.
duking it out with Dustin on that one.
Were you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a fun finish. So, yeah, good ride. Couple little mix-ups there, but all learning moments for folks.
Yeah, someone went down, right?
Yeah, some wheel touching happened, but it was on the grand scheme of things not that big of a deal. Just a little bit of bruised
rash.
ego and a little road rash.
Yep.
So, but yeah, it was still a fun ride, still a great workout, and we all went really hard and faster for it today. And then I rode with Lance on Saturday, and we weren't going super fast, so 52 miles took almost 3 hours.
Yeah, it was
like
chill for
2:45 or
us.
something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, left in the morning, and it was kind of chilly, like cold enough to where I put on a vest, but it was
Yeah.
still bright blue skies, and my knuckleheadedness forgot to put on some sunscreen. So I've got some nice
Get some lines.
nice lines going on.
Those are some
today.
good lines.
Yeah. But all things considered, it was a fun ride. Got to go see some of Lance's family and check out the cool roads, and fun.
cool.
What was the name of that one road that we got to the top of? We both looked at it and we were just like drooling. It was
It's
like
called 11th.
11th Street.
It's 11th Avenue. It's up there north of Philida, and it is gorgeous.
Oh my gosh! It's
Yeah.
just this long road that looks like it goes forever, and it's kind of got this gradual downhill and a little swoop up, and it had a
Goes through
couple-
Whipple Creek. There is no traffic on it ever. It is a fantastic.
I need to do some more riding up there.
Yeah.
So, all right, we are going to save all the other mumbo jumbo, the lead out and the Patreon, until the end of the podcast today, because we're going to try and jump into the topic because we don't have too much of Matt Legrand's time today.
Minutes.
So
Before
we're
I need to go hit the pool.
He's got
gonna
like
drop some knowledge.
7
on
minutes left.
before we get into all this other stuff.
I have no knowledge to drop, but let's do it.
Yeah. So the topic for today is crashing and injuries. Those
I'm good
things.
at the crashing and the injuries part.
So that's why we need your expertise
Yes.
today, right? So we're going to jump into these things, maybe kind of go through some good practices and protocol for, if you have to go through some of this stuff. We've all been there. Usually folks that do a lot of bike riding and racing and triathlon-y stuff, it's not a matter of if, but when you're going to have some sort of an injury. Hopefully it doesn't come at the hands of a bad crash, but we do need to cover that as well because many of us have been there as well.
Yep.
So let's talk about the crashing component of it because that's usually what leads to the injury. I kind of want to get into we can talk about how to avoid crashes all day long, but I think that's kind of like low-hanging fruit. But maybe a lot of people don't think about it, especially in the moment. Like when you go down, you're right there just thinking about like, oh my God, what's going on? You don't maybe have a checklist that you go through of like what to think about, what to do, good practices and protocols. And maybe if you're with somebody that just went down, what are some things that you should do in terms of making sure that they're safe and secure? So let's kind of touch on that real quick first, just to get that part out of the way. What are some of the first things you need to do?
Okay, I've crashed a lot, unfortunately.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've always remembered is if you're about to go down, don't put your hand or arm out to stop you.
Yeah.
That is like a natural reaction to try to catch your fall with your arm or your hand.
Yep.
And usually that is what leads to
Collarbone
fractures.
fractures, yeah.
Or the wrist
or your
fractures.
wrist fracture.
Those are so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes you just can't avoid it. Sometimes it's so quick you have no thought.
Yep.
But every wreck I've been in, there's always been this microsecond of where
You're like the OSHIT.
oh yes, I'm going down, and my thought process always goes to okay, tuck.
Yep.
Just tuck and roll. Don't brace. Try to tuck and roll, which is why I have no skin on the back of my
You don't need skin
shoulder.
back there.
No, nobody sees that unless I'm showing it up.
Yeah.
So it's because I try to land on my shoulder. Now you can break your shoulder blade or your
I've got it.
scapula,
Or you can do the whole AC joint.
or you can separate your whole AC joint.
Turns out you don't need.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
Do you still have that big
Yeah, can you see it through
Yeah.
the shirt?
the
There's
piano
still a
key?
separation there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
You
not
still
going
have
anywhere.
separation. Yeah. No, it's not.
How's that feeling, by the way?
I can't do push-ups very well, but other than that, like I'm pretty. I mean, I'm gonna
You're
go
okay.
swimming a little
And
bit.
you can
so,
swim.
Yeah, not
Cool.
bad.
So tuck and roll.
So that's a tuck and roll, and then I try not to slam your head. But sometimes you just can't avoid
Right.
all that stuff.
Yeah, just have a helmet on in
Yeah.
general, and then do
Oh
what you
yes.
can
Oh
to.
my goodness. Please wear a helmet.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, if you get taken out at a high rate of speed and things happen so fast, you're not going to have a lot of natural instincts that are going to jump in unless you've been there before. And I think that's why Lance is so good at the tuck and roll. But if
Because
you,
I've crashed so many freaking times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's tough.
I'm also a ninja.
born and raised.
Born and
ninja.
raised
Yeah.
ninja.
Yeah. So you go down. Let's say you did the tuck and roll, or you didn't, and now you're laying there. What are some other things that you should start doing? Like, what do you guys like? Take inventory? Do you guys think
No,
about?
ignore all safety protocol. Check on the bike first.
Is your bike
But how's
broken?
my bike? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, the biggest issue is head or neck injuries
absolutely.
or spinal cord injuries initially. So if your head took a slap or neck,
Yeah.
or something, do not move.
Yeah.
Don't move. Let somebody move you or wait for EMS to get there
Yeah.
if that's the case.
So I believe it was the Giro over the weekend. Did you see the guy descending?
Correct,
And
yes.
caught his front wheel and
Yes.
snapped his bike in half.
Correct.
Like,
Scary.
Went over his bars.
Yeah.
Going roughly 40 miles an
That's
hour.
exactly.
Been there.
And the first thing he does is he gets up and he starts walking around, and like the mechanic brings him a bike to get on. I'm like, no,
Wait.
hold on a second here. That was a
Right after he like looks at the bike and he's thinking about getting on, he just looks like he's starting to get dizzy.
Yep.
And he looks like he kind of goes over to the guardrail for a little bit. It just doesn't look right to me. And you
the
know,
house of cards starts to fall right there. Yeah.
and he kind of like starts to sit down by the guardrail, and it's just like, oh yeah, no, he's done.
I watched it in slow motion. He actually didn't hit his head.
It looked like his whole body kind of did the front
He
flop
did.
thing.
He landed on his shoulder and his side. He didn't really hit his head, but he was going 40 or 45 miles an hour, and so he bounced on the pavement. And
Yeah.
you're gonna. There's injuries. There's no way you're not gonna
Yeah.
be injured. Something like that.
So the first thing that is you're going to want to do is just stay put, especially like that's the hard part about riding by yourself. It's like if you go down, like what are you going to do? And I've been in that situation before. I mean, I broke my femur by myself. I went down on a mountain bike ride.
You got taken up by a deer or something.
Almost. I came around a corner on a single track trail, and there was a deer in the road or the path, and she kind of walked my way. She spooked me, and I spooked her. So she went left and to my left, and I tried to go to my right, but my wheels washed out, and I landed on my right hip, and it ended up fracturing the femoral neck. And I hit the ground hard, like almost like knocked the wind out of me. But my hip was the thing that hit first, and like instantly I knew something was wrong. I went to stand up, and it just didn't work. It just was like, was there for 5 minutes, still nobody around. I managed to get my leg over. That was a process, getting the saddle underneath you so that because I couldn't lift my leg up, but I managed to get the bike underneath me, and I'm like, all right, I just need to get to the bottom of this long single track trail. It was probably another half mile or something like that. And then it was just like slow rollers getting out. You have to go through some like washes and different things. And that was about 2.5 or 3 miles. I'm like, I'll just soft pedal out of here.
Jake.
So I get to the bottom. I go to take my first pedal rotation, and I about screamed my head off. I'm like, this ain't gonna work. And so I immediately pulled over and gingerly got myself down to the ground and called my wife to tell her what happened. And she's like, do you want me to call like 911 and get the ranger out there and paramedics and helicopters? I'm like, no. Just talk me through this real quick. And at that moment, I actually started to feel like I was going to black out. And thankfully, my wife knew the trail pretty well because she used to run back there all the time. And I told her exactly where I was at. And we were trying to figure out this whole process of me getting out of there. And in that moment, I'm starting to black out. I'm like, if I stop talking, you know where I'm at. But then I heard some like bells coming down. Like somebody had like a bear bell in the back of their saddlebag.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, hold on, there's some people coming. And 2 guys and one of the guy's sons was there, and they were nice enough to stop. And what ended up happening was they got me back on the bike. I told my wife exactly where the end of the trailhead was, and I'll meet her there. These guys helped me get back on the bike, and then they pushed me up all the hills and through the flat sections, and then I slow coasted down everything without pedaling a single time. So basically used my mountain bike as a wheelchair to get out of
gosh.
there, going through like river passings and through like this. It's one of the sweetest, funnest, most awesome single track trails to race.
No thanks.
And then at the end of it, there's my wife with the car. They helped me get into the car, put the bike on the bike rack. Wife went back to the house because I made her go back there so I could change because I didn't want them to cut my kid off of me at the hospital.
Right.
Took me to the hospital, got admitted, was there for a couple days, and had surgery, put 3 titanium screws in my right hip.
Which
and
are all still there.
all still there.
Yeah.
Titanium for life. So, but that was an adventure, and that was a long process, and it was tough because I was by myself. Like, what if I was there and there was no cell service?
And it was nighttime.
And it was nighttime.
And the bears get hungry out there.
Exactly. Mountain lions where I was at.
Okay.
But, it was a little bit later in the day. It was probably 6 o'clock at night, and it was August, if I'm not mistaken. No, September. So there was still a little bit of light left, but, I mean, that could have ended poorly.
Yes.
So
Scary
just
stuff.
makes you take pause on, like, where you ride and when you go ride by yourself. And that's why I get worried about you all the time.
I do it too much.
So,
Yeah. I think the satellite phone, that makes me feel better that
Yes,
you have one of those.
I do have one of those in my pack.
And
So-
as horrible as this topic is,
Yeah.
I'm out of here.
you out of here? Do you have any story that you want to share with us before you leave?
Make sure your bike's in good shape, Make sure that you can put your weight on your aero bars.
On your, so your stem doesn't just implode on you.
Yeah.
Cool. Well,
right,
thanks
Matt.
for your time, Matt. Wish
My
we could have
pleasure.
We
Bye,
miss
guys.
just a
you.
little bit longer.
We love you.
We'll do it.
Maybe we can get somebody else to come jump in on this microphone thing. Let's see what happens here when we drop Matt out from the equation. Hold on a second. All right, there we go. It's just me and Lance now.
Hey,
Cool.
we're looking in the right direction.
Yeah.
All right.
So taking inventory, probably not riding by yourself in the first place is a good thing, or at least
When you're
let
in the
people
backcountry.
know where you're at and have constant ability to communicate with people. And just be willing to pay the piper if you get yourself in a bad way. But if you're there with people, I mean, you need to secure the scene. I mean, there's a first aid and CPR protocol. If you're certified, you've got to kind of stop and survey and make sure that somebody's kind of taking charge, making sure that you're securing the person, and then you want to get ambulatory help if necessary. We had a couple little mix-ups on our flogging ride, and thankfully everybody was okay, and it was pretty not pedestrian, but it was just road rash and like a little bit of a little cut and whatnot.
Right.
You can kind of pick up on that pretty quickly. You're not having to call 911, but if it's something that's pretty severe, you need to get paramedics there.
Well, case in point, I crashed 2 weeks ago in the middle of the Cascade gravel grinder. I hit the ground pretty hard.
Yeah.
We were going 20 miles an hour. We weren't going that fast, but I hit the ground pretty hard. Luckily, nobody hit me. But as soon as I hit the ground, I immediately sat up and felt my shoulders, felt my arms, felt my legs, and I'm like, I'm not hurt.
Yeah.
So I stand up,
yeah.
and I'm like, my head hit the ground, but I didn't see stars or anything.
That's where you got lucky.
Yes.
Is the fact that you didn't get any kind of a concussion, and that's a testament to having a good helmet.
Yes.
But that's something that can really screw with you because there are a lot of people that will have that happen and they think they're fine. But what they don't realize is
their head is not right.
Their head's not right. And having like amnesia is a very common thing when you hit your head.
Yeah.
And to not remember like the last hour or two, and then like you think about it like, oh gosh, I actually rode for 2 hours. I don't remember anything. That's kind of a scary thing.
Yes.
And that happens often.
It does.
And people think that they're fine when they're actually not. So, the fact that you got back on the bike and rode and raced and won somehow and hit your head with, damage on your helmet.
The helmet's toast.
Yeah. That's just bonkers to me.
That's why I don't quite understand. I mean, why can something like that happen? And I came through relatively unscathed.
Yeah.
And you have this very similar thing happen in a race this weekend.
Yep.
And we have a friend of the podcast and a friend of ours who was injured pretty badly.
Yeah.
His head's okay, but his leg was not.
No, he had surgery this morning to put it all back together.
Correct. So, why does that happen sometimes? That's just it. I'm not so cocky to think that it's my ninja skills that save me from wrecks, because that's not the case. There's a whole lot of luck involved too, and trying to put yourself in the right spot, in the right position, and making sure you're following the right wheels. But
You've got a lucky rabbit's foot in your back
do.
pocket. So
I do. I agree with that.
that's another tough thing. I mean, like in a race too. Like, do you know how the race went? Did they carry on, or did they neutralize the race? Do you know anything about that?
That's a whole other story.
Oh no. Is that something we can talk about or no?
Yeah, I think so. I just have to not use names.
Go for it.
Where that wreck happened, there were two different 40s plus fields going on at the same time, and the second field got neutralized behind them because an ambulance had pulled up to
take care of the scene.
Yeah, and so they blocked the road when the ambulance came up. So one of them got neutralized. But there was a guy, and I don't have the story quite right, and part of this is rumor, so that's why I'm not using any names at all. But in the other field, a guy had broken away at the front, and right after I don't think he got as held up as the rest of the field, and he went around the pilot car.
Oh, wow.
He
was the pilot car trying to neutralize him?
Yes, and I think he went around the pilot car, and he ended up winning the race, but he was DQ'd for not following the commissar's instructions or whatever. So I don't exactly have all those details right. I know I don't have the details right, but
he got a good workout.
But he did. He got a very good workout. He had a very strong solo breakaway. Would have probably won the race anyway.
Yeah.
But he got DQ'd because he went around the pilot car or whatever.
So going back to the person that's on the ground and doing all the inventory checklist and just making sure that person's safe and sound. I mean, if you've got any inclination that this person's got some head trauma, then they need to be shut down. Somebody needs to come pick them up. At what point in time, though, do you draw the line and say, all right, that person's good. They can get back on their bike and they can go ahead and ride, and they don't need to be picked up or taken to a hospital?
Yeah, if they're seeing stars, if there's damage to their helmet, if they can stand and move okay, if the bike's not broken.
Yeah, definitely. There's different trainings that you can get for like head trauma for people that have sustained any kind of head trauma in any kind of an accident, in terms of checking them and making sure that they're not dealing with said head trauma.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the institution that does this, but I've actually had some of that training before for like coaching licenses and things of that nature. But generally speaking, it's like if they're having any kind of memory recollection issues, or if they're having repetitive questions that they're asking, if their eyes are tracking funnily, if their pupils aren't dilating correctly, if their speech is any kind of weird, if it's kind of like mumbled, or if they're just not talking the way that they normally talk, and that might be kind of tough if you don't know the person all that well, but you can kind of get a pretty good consensus as to where they're at there. And then obviously want to take a look at the helmet to know that they in fact hit their head. That's a big thing. That's probably like the most difficult thing to deal with, is
try to assess a head injury.
Yeah, TBIs are not something that you want to mess around with.
It's not.
So going through that process is probably a good thing for a lot of people, especially if you're doing competitive rides and racing and all that. Just to have a little bit of training or a little bit of expertise and background, and that would be a good thing.
Right.
So
I know with this race that happened this weekend where the rider had the leg injury, luckily one of the other racers was a fireman. When this individual went down, he was in a significant amount of pain because of his leg injury, and the fireman was able to get him in a more comfortable position before the ambulance got there, so that he wasn't screaming in terrorizing pain, because he was. And so that was fortunate that happened, and he was able to assess head injury issues or
That's
whatnot.
funny, because our old teammate, the late Michael Myers, he had a little bit of a propensity for crashing every now and then, because he's just an aggressive rider, right?
He is an aggressive rider. He didn't have the best vision either, and that's not a good combination.
Yeah. We were doing a ride out at the Bridge of the Gods, and it was myself and him and another teammate, and we were just moving, making our way from Multnomah Falls back to Littoral Falls. And it was just before we got to Littoral Falls, there was some shadows, and then there was a depression in the road that he didn't see, and he had his hands just really relaxed on the bars, and he was bent down, and we were all taking rotations. He hit that depression and lost control, and I think we were going about 28 miles an hour, and he ended up going over the bars, and he hit his head extremely hard as well. Broke some ribs, punctured lungs, and whatnot, but he had zero memory of the entire thing. And when we stopped, because the teammate that we were with kind of got caught up and taken down as well, and thankfully I didn't get mixed up in that.
Yeah.
When I got back to him, he was unconscious, he was moaning, and I was trying to assess the scene, make sure that he was set and that the other person was set. And just by pure dumb luck, the first person that rolls up on it is an ER nurse with 30 years of experience.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
and she was there with, I think it was her daughter-in-law, who was a newer nurse. So they helped stabilize the situation. And it was probably 4 cars later, it was an EMT technician that worked for the fire department that was there. So it was like, why? They're everywhere. It's just like, that if you're going to crash, make sure that those people are around you, right?
Right.
So they totally helped secure the scene. Unfortunately, it took the ambulance probably 30 minutes to get there.
Yeah.
And Michael was still having a heck of a time, and he just didn't have any recollection of what was going on, and he was just hurting. But we kept him stable, and those nurses were fantastic. So, but
Yeah,
it happens.
It happens. When I had my bad wreck at Mount Palomar at
Yes.
training camp last year, I went over the handlebars at like 40 miles an hour, and somehow managed not to hit my head at all. As soon as I hit the ground and rolled, I immediately stood up. It's just my reaction. It was like, am I injured anywhere? Everything feels okay. My collarbones aren't broken. My shoulders are okay.
It's kind of funny you say that. It's like we almost want to prove to ourselves that we're okay.
Yes.
Like we want to get up and be like, brush it off. You're okay. Dust it
Exactly.
off. You're going to be good. You're going to get back on your bike and you're ride home. That's the same thing I did when I broke my hip. And
Yeah.
it didn't last for very long, for all of about 1 second, but.
Well, I stood right up, and of course, I had teammates on me immediately, and they're like, Lance, sit down.
Yeah.
And then Dr. Hannell,
Yep.
he was just 30 seconds behind,
Yep.
and he's like, and he came right over to me, looked me straight in the eyes, and started asking me all these questions.
Yeah.
And he was asking me questions to find out, did you hit your head? Do you know what day it is? Do you know what
Yep.
time of day it is? Do you know what month it is? Do you
Yep.
know who's the president? He was asking me these questions,
Yep.
and I hadn't hit my head, so I was okay.
Yeah. And that's a good thing, the asking question point. I actually had a bad snowboarding injury. Long story short, broke a binding, went over a big tabletop, crashed, have no memory of about 9 hours. And when I was able to get back down to the bottom of the lift, my friend who was an EMT called over the paramedics, and they sat me down and they started asking me questions. Of course, don't remember this.
Yeah.
They asked me what year it was. I was telling them it was 10 years earlier than it was, and who the president was, didn't know, and just a bunch
Yeah.
of questions like that. And I failed every single question miserably, and it was off to the hospital I went. So
Nope, you're done.
yep, you're shut down, buddy. So that's a good thing, is the question.
The question to assess traumatic brain
Yeah.
injury or not. Yeah.
Another thing too is when we had our little accident with Michael and other teammate at the Littoral Falls back there in the gorge. It was that road back there. There's not much of a shoulder.
There is no shoulder, yeah.
Making sure that you secure the scene to make sure that no further damage happens, and maybe kind of try to get yourself out of the road as best as possible so that cars can still come by. And don't be afraid to wave people down to ask for help. But that's something that you're going to
Yeah.
need to take stock on or take inventory on, as well as getting yourself out of the road so that you don't get run over by a car.
Correct.
I hate talking about all this stuff.
We've just had so many incidents. Stuff happens, know, and sometimes you come out okay, sometimes you don't. You just have to know how to respond to it correctly and quickly so you don't make it worse.
Exactly. When I got hit by the car 3 years ago, again, another TBI there. I have zero memory.
Don't remember
for about 3.5, 4 hours. I can remember being with our teammate Sean Martin. I can remember a couple little tidbits, and I know exactly where we were at. So it was probably a good 30 minutes before we got hit. And then the next memory I have was probably 11:30, if I'm not mistaken, at night in the hospital, like asking, "Why am I here?
What
What's going
happened?
on? And why does everything hurt so friggin' bad?" And then they put me back under to go try and fix my shoulder because it was
Yeah.
completely torn out of my shoulder socket. So that sucked. But again, that was a situation where, Sean was in the road, like, and was completely like, just like, just like he was done.
He was out.
But no, he kept maintaining consciousness.
Okay.
I think from an acute standpoint, he had it worse than I did. He broke his back, he broke his knee, his toe, his face was pretty beat up. He went into a windshield pretty stinking hard, had glass all over him, and he was in the road bleeding everywhere. And I landed 115, 120 feet away from where the impact happened, down a 25 or 30 foot steep embankment in a big blackberry thicket. And if you don't know what those things are, they're full of thorns. Like you even
It's all
just
thorns.
like look at them and they're going to poke you, right? So I was in the middle of that, and when the responders got there, my bike was in 9 pieces. If you look at the thumbnail art, that's my bike, by the way, after that crash. Yeah. So
It looks like your camera.
oh, oops. So it's just Lance now. Sorry, I'll get that fixed here in just a second. Anyhow, so my bike was in a bunch of pieces in the bushes and some tall grass, and you couldn't see anything. So it was pretty much like there was only one rider there.
There was only one rider.
Yeah.
Unless the driver knew to, hey, I think I hit 2 people and not 1. And if Sean wasn't there to say, hey, okay, I have a buddy. He's somewhere else.
Well, when the responders got there, they're like, hey, he's like, hey, there's another person here. And they're like, no, you're okay, buddy. Don't worry about it. We got you taken. He's like, no, really, there's another person. And he had to convince them a little bit that there was actually 2 people,
2 people
that were hit. And they finally figured it out. And there was a police officer who was the first one on the scene. He went over and he determined, oh, there is another guy here. He blazed down this like steep embankment. They like to get me out of this place. They had to put me on a flatbed or a stretcher,
a litter.
and it took 4 firefighters and a rope and pulley system to get me out of this embankment that I was down in.
Oh my gosh.
So this guy goes flying down there, goes right into the middle of that blackberry bush, and he was getting tore up just as much as I was, and he was sitting there with me.
Just, yeah.
So,
My gosh.
what other injuries have you had? Tell us about another lens crash.
I've had a few too many. That's the problem. The Palomar one was the worst one for me, just because it took me out for like a month and a half. I didn't ride. I actually broke a piece of my hip when it happened, and luckily that was the only part that actually happened. So I was fortunate that it wasn't worse than that, for sure. But
What about in your triathlon days? Any crashes on that TT bike? Did you do any of the infamous I'm a triathlete, I'm going to crash my bike thing?
I don't recall any crashes on my time trial bike.
And then I want to take this even a step back further, and I know this is kind of off the beaten path here, but what sports did you play again in, like, say, as an adult, or not an adult, as a youth, and then in your high school years? What sports were you playing?
I was I was a decathlete. I did the decathlon, track and field, and
High school and college?
High school and college.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else?
And then I played soccer.
Okay.
As well. So
I think that's where you got your cat-like skills.
well, I think a lot of it is I was a pole vaulter. The pole vault is part of the decathlon, and there is a lot of spatial awareness, like gymnast
Proprioceptive
type,
skills.
abilities, like just you're being aware of where your body is in space. And I don't know if that's something you can teach. It's just something that's a little bit more innate in me.
So I think that being in your tuned DNA, if you will, you're a good athlete to boot, because obviously you're doing decathlete stuff.
Using a little bit of everything.
Going into the triathlon world, you probably had a little bit better proprioceptiveness awareness on that bike, so that you're not necessarily going to be crashing as much. And
Probably.
when
yeah.
you do crash, it's usually because you're pushing the envelope a little bit too hard, or like the gravel grinder one, it was just not even a lapse in judgment. It was somebody that just, you're in a tight group, and if you look away for a split second, like you did to get your water bottle, and somebody does something erratic, then you're going to go down. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
But
It was just bad luck.
For the most part, you don't have those crashes by yourself. That's like self-induced, unless you're really trying to push the envelope on something.
Most of I've had very few crashes actually on the road when I'm riding the road, but on a mountain bike or cyclocross bike, I've crashed those hundreds of times.
I had a crash on the road here in the Washington, Vancouver area when I was new to the area, and I quickly learned that in Washington, wood bridges are slick.
They can be slick.
On 2 different occasions, one on the road bike and one on the mountain bike. And both of them, I hit the wood, and it's just like Bambi on ice, and it's like, whoop, you're down, buddy.
Yeah.
So,
If it's sprinkling, you got to be cautious of those wood bridges.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
other crashes, anything else you want to?
A lot of my dirt crashes, I haven't usually gotten injured. Luckily,
Yeah.
On my mountain bike, I don't jump it. I don't do jump lines. I don't do stuff like that
I'm
that
the
like
same way.
downhillers or mountain bikers do. I'm beyond that.
I used to eat that stuff up as a kid. I still enjoy jumping a little bit, but I know that I'll push the envelope too hard. And the next thing I know, I'm going to be on the ground and saying to myself, why did you do that? It was just one stupid little slip up or one little mistake and done. You know,
Yes.
I've got to go to work on Monday. I've got a family, and I still want to ride my bike. I don't want to be like casted up and healing up. So
Yes, correct. So I guess I've just been fortunate with all that stuff. You know, my back issues that I have been dealing with for the last 5, 6, 7 years. That's all. It's actually not the result of
bike crashes.
bike crashes. It's a result of repetitive use. It's abusing my body as an athlete for a number of decades.
And then the
So-
position that you had to stand in while you were treating patients as a dentist for
Bent,
couple decades.
bent over for a couple decades,
Yeah.
working on patients all day. Yeah, that was the other thing.
So here's another crash that's going to segue into our next part of this topic. Is I was racing my mountain bike. I was doing it was like kind of like a short track-ish kind of race in Southern California. And I was coming through a novice field, and I was kind of following a line, and a guy came in a little hot behind me and kind of hit me in the back and sent me over the bars.
Oh,
Flew over, hit my head. I've hit my head too many times. That explains a lot, right? So I hit my head, got a little bit of a bell ringing there, if you will. And then I also, because of the way that I was hit, I didn't tuck and roll. There was like a bunch of like sagebrush kind of stuff, and I didn't want to
Yeah.
go flying into that. You're just trying to protect yourself. But just the way that I landed on my outreached arm, it caused the humerus to kind of jam up into it's called the glenoid fossa, which is the little basin that it like kind of articulates around
Yeah.
your arm. So that went up in there super hard, and it cracked that. And then in the process, I tore my supraspinatus, which is one of your primary rotator cuff muscles.
Yeah.
And I tore my labrum, and this was in my right shoulder. So that's about when I ended up hanging up most of my my slow pitch softball career. I used to be a pretty decent ball player, but anyhow. So that happened, and what did I do? I got back on the bike after I got everything straightened out, and I finished the race, and I still got 13th out of 50.
oh my
And
gosh.
I didn't know that anything was wrong with my shoulder, so I took like 2 or 3 days off the bike, and then I got back on the bike, and I started riding again. And I just kind of kept going through it, and I would come home, and I would, like a big giant baby, complain to my wife and say, hey, my shoulder hurts, take care of me. And she's like, you need to go to the doctor. I'm like, I don't need to go to the doctor. I'll be fine. I'm just rub some dirt on it. This crash happened in July. I finally went to the doctor in late September, early October, and he did x-rays. He's like, you're an idiot. You broke your shoulder. You've got what looks like some possible tears. So a couple of weeks go by, and I go and get my MRI, and they determined that, yep, I've got all that stuff, and then I'm supposed to have surgery. And because I took so long to get in there, the soonest they could get me into surgery was the beginning of December. And at the time, we were pregnant with our youngest daughter.
5 months.
Yeah. And then I was doing physical therapy, just like some prehab stuff, just to get stronger for when I got done with the surgery, so that when it actually happened, you can kind of come back and bounce back a little bit faster.
Right.
I ended up canceling the surgery because we were too close to my daughter being born, and I didn't want to be held up in an immobilizer for however long it was going to be. And I ended up just doing physical therapy for it, but that process took a year. But the moral of the story here is, don't be an idiot and think that you're superhuman and that you're going to heal every single time. If it
Right.
hurts for more than a couple days, you probably need to go see the doctor.
Yes.
Like, had I done that earlier, I probably could have had surgery and probably could have expedited the whole process and probably could have been better, at least closer to being better by the time my daughter was born, as opposed to having to add another 6 months of physical therapy on that
Right.
because I opted in not to do the surgery. So how often, Lance Hepler, do you continue to ride, Lance Hepler, like this past weekend, Lance Hepler, when doctors and medical professionals and other people have told you not to ride, yet you still go out there and get on your bike?
Yeah, I'm not a smart man sometimes.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, my crash on Palomar, I crashed. I stood right up. I felt like I was okay. And within 20 minutes, I couldn't stand on my left side.
Yeah.
And so I knew that something was wrong. I couldn't ride anymore anyway because I broke my bike into pieces anyway. So it was ruined. And it turned out that I didn't break my hip. I broke a piece off the acetabulum rim, which is the socket where your femur sits into. Yep. And so there was no surgery that had to be done, but it was like non-weight bearing for like a month.
Yep. It's supposed to be a little bit longer than that. I think it's supposed to be 6 weeks, but what's Lance out there doing?
I was one-legged Zwifting.
Yeah.
With the other side. So dumb.
It's hard. It really is hard to turn that off and to stop training, because you generally are in good shape and you've been going hard, especially if it was in a race. You know that you're finally tuned, and then all of a sudden you go from all of this training, all of this fitness, all of this fun stuff on the bike to womp womp womp, not doing anything.
I tell you, one of my biggest issues is I know that things will change. Okay, I'm 51 years old at this point, and I know things will change. So while I'm healthy and while I'm feeling good, I want to race every chance I can get, because I know it's not going to last forever.
Yeah.
Now, what does that mean? Does it mean I'm just going to be able to do a couple races a year, or by the time I'm 60, I'm broken enough that I can't race at all anymore? I don't know.
You're racing on Zwift, huh?
Yeah.
On a hand bike.
I don't want to be doing that. And so when I'm feeling okay, I go race, or I ride, or I take advantage of that. And so sometimes when I have a little injury that I don't think is bad, I just push through it. And I've always had this mentality of push through the pain, just look beyond it. That's
part of being an endurance athlete.
Yes, that is the Ironman mantra. I pushed myself in some Ironman races way beyond where I should have stopped. Where where you end up in the medical tent for hours and hours because you pushed way beyond what your body really should have done. And part of that is the power of the mind and what you can kind of push through, and part of that is just sheer stubbornness and stupidity. And I don't know where that comes from, or what that. Some people have that innately in them, and some don't. It just kind of depends. But that's the biggest deal for me. This recent injury, I didn't feel like it was an injury. I bounced my body off the pavement pretty hard.
Yeah, you're like, I'm gonna hurt from this.
I'm gonna hurt
few
from
days,
this.
maybe a week.
I have a fragile back. I have 4 or 5 vertebrae that have small herniations that have always been there for the last 7-8 years. And so I'm prone to more disc herniations and potential sciatic issues because of that. And I don't want to believe that I'm just going to break again. These last 3 years have been friggin' awesome for
fantastic.
me. They have been really good for me. But I just don't want to believe that that's going to happen. So for me to have all this training I've done, all this fitness. I mean, I've raced 15 times this year, and I've been on the podium
just about every time.
13 of those, which is phenomenal for me. And so I just didn't want to lose it. So I kept thinking, it's going to be okay. It's going to get better. And then when I just can't stand properly
or sleep properly,
I finally had to call the neurosurgeon. He's
Were you getting a little grumpy too?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually, I get grumpy if I just don't ride for a day.
Yeah. I'm in the same boat. I've been kicked out of my house before and told to go ride my bike, so my attitude will get in check. So,
so yeah, it ends up being a more complicated, mental issue and how you deal with those things.
So it was about a week ago. Doctor tells you, Lance, you need to shut it down for 2 weeks. Doctor's not a cyclist. Doctor's not a trained athlete or an endurance athlete.
No.
So he's not going to quite get the mentality or the psyche, but I'm sure he's dealt with plenty of them.
And some of his partners are, and he's dealt with me before as well. So he knows me and he knows my history as well.
So do you think in the back of his head, he's thinking, if I tell him to shut it down for 2 weeks, at least he'll kind of calm down a little bit for 2 weeks. He's not going to take the time off, but that's, you ask for one thing, hoping that you'll get another.
I think so. He also has me doing some PT stuff.
Okay.
And he started me on a strong inflammatory as well to try to help to see if that will help things heal. He says if I don't get some decent results, then I'm going to need an MRI, and the MRI will show if there's a new herniation that needs.
You told me about this anti-inflammatory stuff that you're taking. Tell me the side effects from that potentially again. This is like every single endurance athlete's like worst nightmare. Go.
Okay, all the potential side effects. It's nausea, vomiting, diarrhea,
fatigue,
chronic fatigues, restlessness, sleeplessness, and weight gain.
Yeah, fantastic.
Fantastic. Sign me up. Luckily, I haven't had any of those. So,
does he know somebody that knows you that's trying to get you like shut down? He's like, A, I'm going to tell him not to go race, and B, I'm going to give him this stuff. So it like just gives him every poor like side effect that you could ever want as an athlete.
Want to stay away from? Probably. I don't know.
That's crazy. So again, listening to our bodies, listening to our doctors, where do you draw the line? Like, when would you like seriously like shut it down? I mean, what's it going to take for you to kind of open up and just say, all right, you got me. I will take this time off. Is it like surgery and like you're done?
Probably.
You're going to go until that happens?
I don't know. I don't want surgery again. I've had back surgery 3 times. I've had 4 major surgeries. 2 were done at the same time. It's never fun when that happens. I'm down for 6 months when that happens. And, it's not like I'm getting any younger.
Yeah.
You know, the more of these things happen, my athletic life just goes away.
Well, you know what? I have to give you kudos. I remember back in September, it was Labor Day weekend, 2017, David Douglas, cyclocross race. Lance Hepler goes out and does 2 races that day.
I did the Clydesdale race because I was chunky at the time.
And then you went and did your age group category.
I did the Masters Cat 3 category as well.
You came back to the team tent, and it was a yard sale of Lance. And I've got the image burned in my eyes. I've seen it. As a matter of fact, I took the picture. It was Lance yard sailed on the ground, like flat on his back, arms sprawled out, eyes shut, and you can tell that you're in pain.
I was in pain.
And that was the tipping point for you. And I don't think you got back on a bike after that for how long?
It was probably 6 months, 6 or 8 months. It was, I don't know if that was the catalyst, but it caused a herniation that I ended up with drop foot that has never recovered. I still have drop foot on my right side.
Yep.
So, yeah.
So you
I've pushed myself too hard many times.
Bit, yeah. So you did come back from that though, and you put on some pounds.
Yep.
And that was like, all right, you had your little epiphany at that moment, like, I'm going to live my life a little bit differently. And to start that off, I'm going to sell my practices.
Yep.
I'm going to retire.
Yep.
I'm going to do this whole like vagabond, living in a van, riding bikes across the world. And we kind of talked about this even a little bit last week. And then you started training again. And I know that you were like in a bad way. And I think that's right around when we started the podcast as well. And just watching you go through your whole process, your metamorphosis in such a short period of time, you had like a full on, like I've never seen somebody change so quickly. And you've got your little Hepler focus that you always like lay fame to. But you worked through it and you got really good results. And here you are today, like, you've had a lot of fun times in these last 3 years. Do you think that this is going to be something that's going to have a lingering effect on you? Or do you think you're just going to have to regroup and hopefully it's not that bad? Or even if it is that bad, you're going to be able to come back from this again and do the same thing?
I do think I don't think it's going to have that much of a lingering effect because it's not nearly like it was before. I mean, I had neurological issues immediately after that, time 4 years ago, and I'm not having neurological issues now. I'm just having pain and discomfort.
It's got a pain in the arse.
Just a pain in the arse. I have these sciatica symptoms right in the middle of my butt, on my left butt cheek. That it just feels like I'm being stabbed all the time, and that is a nerve issue. It's not a muscle issue. It's not piriformis syndrome. It's not. I know where it's coming from because I've seen my MRIs. For the last 5 years. So. I do think I'll be fine and be able to be okay, but I might have to back off for a little bit. And actually, this isn't a bad time for me to back off because I've done a bunch of races. I've had a great start to my year and
regroup for cyclocross.
Hopefully, regroup for cyclocross if we have some decent cyclocross, series. Hopefully, they happen this year. So I don't know. I've been fortunate. That accident that happened to me, it did completely change my life, and very much so for the better. I would not have sold my practices and backed out, and retired when I did if I wasn't injured. I'd still be working. We wouldn't be as good of friends.
No.
I wouldn't be racing like I do. I'd be racing occasionally. And it's all worked out very good for me.
Oh, yeah.
So far. So
You're doing just fine,
I'm
my
doing
friend.
just fine. So, there's a lot of luck involved with that and a lot of, fortunate planning and a lot of hard work that took me to get to that point. But I don't want to brag too much because people hate me.
Let's talk about bouncing back from injuries, if
Okay.
you will. I talked about my little story when I had the little run-in with the deer. We had, me getting carted out of there on my bike and all that other stuff. So I had surgery. They put the pins in me, and I was sent home discharged, and I was told to start doing physical therapy. I think it was like I had to go 5 days post-op to get a checkup from the doc, and then they cleared me to start doing physical therapy. I started, I think it was about a week after the crash, and they wanted just to work on basic mobility and things of that nature because having that hardware in there changed everything for me. It really did. It gave me the strength that I needed in the bone to be able to start to work the joint and all that other fun stuff. So it was exactly 10 days post-op that I was back on the trainer. Riding on the trainer. The doctor tells me, he's like, I know that
with
you
the
like
broken hip, with the broken, wow.
The doc tells me, he's like, hey, riding a bike is actually really good for, building mobility and range of motion. And I said, hey, you don't have to tell me twice. Like, I know you like to ride a bike. Just do it on a trainer or a stationary bike and be very careful. I'm like, I can do that. And so I was riding for 3 days, called up the doctor and said, hey, doc, got a question for you. What do you think about this? I'm like, can I go ride my bike outside? He's like, I wouldn't advise that. I'm like, if I promise you not to crash, and if I crash, it's on me, and maybe you'll get another house payment or two out of this in the means of a surgery. And he's like, you can ride on the bike. You cannot get out of the saddle. You need to keep your watts down. You need to not put extra effort into this. You have to keep it steady Eddie. So 14 days post-op, I did a 35-mile bike ride.
What?
It was down in Orange County, this little Santiago Canyon loop, and it was a decent amount of climbing, but I kept my butt on the saddle.
Yeah.
Called back to the doctor and said, hey, doc, ride went great. He's like, oh, that's good to hear. I'm like, I minded all of my P's and Q's. I did exactly what you told me to do. Got another question for you, doc. Doc, I've got this ride that I do every single year for this charity. What do you think? What do you think about me over the course of 2 days doing a 150-mile ride? He's like, what? I'm like, if I stay within your protocol, is that okay? He's like, oh my God, you're an idiot. But I suppose you just have to shut it down if you start to have any pain or discomfort or anything goes wrong. But if you're going to do that and you can abide by all my little rules, you can do that. So 3 weeks post-op, I did the MS 150. And
3 weeks?
3 weeks post-op.
You rode 150 miles.
150
over
miles.
2 days.
Over 2 days. 100 miles the first day. It was actually about 105, and then the second day was 50, but it was actually more like 55. So it was about...
Holy cow.
Yeah, it was more like 160 miles, but I did it. And I heeded all of his advice. There was a couple of long climbs. I think you and I have done one of them before. It's down in San Elijo, if I'm not mistaken. It's about a 3-mile climb. It's a pretty decent gradient, and I just sat there and spun right up it. Probably went a little bit too hard on that one because after that I started to cramp a little bit. But it's hard to ride sitting down and managing yourself when you're watching people and you see a person going by you or up the road. You want to go chase them down. But I did that, and I was able to get that done. Following your doctor's orders and not being too much of an idiot is a good thing, and that helped me. I think it just kind of helped me kind of know what I was capable of doing. The whole recovery process, I think, was excelled because I was willing to work hard, and I didn't miss a day of physical therapy. As a matter of fact, I went to physical therapy every single day for that whole 3-week time period, and then beyond that, I did every single physical therapy, and I was always asking for more. I'm like, I need to challenge myself. What else can I do?
Yeah.
Everything that they threw at me, I did, from ways to rest, ways to eat, and things to be doing on the bike, things to be doing off the bike, and just taking a rest day when I was supposed to. I listened to them, and I think that really paid big dividends. So what is it that you do when you're going through the recovery process that makes it be successful for you? Because you've obviously bounced back from quite a few of them.
Actually, having a plan is actually really important.
Working with the medical professional?
Yes, working with the medical professional. Also, for me, having a goal on the calendar. somewhere.
There you go.
Like there's a race I want to do in 3 months, or there's a race I want to do in 6 months. Or
Going
something
back
like
to that same story, like, yes, I wanted to go do this ride because I hadn't missed it, and I helped them raise a bunch of money every year, and I loved it. It's such a beautiful ride. That was on my calendar. But the thing that I did the day that I got home from the hospital was I registered for this race down there. It's a mountain bike race. It's a 50-mile mountain bike race with it was actually 56 with about 12,000 feet of elevation gain. It was, it's called
legit.
Vision Quest, and it's a legitimate race, and there's some heavy hitters that showed up to this thing. I registered for that the day that I got home from the hospital, and it was 6 months, almost to the day later. I'm like, all right, that's my goal on the calendar. I need to get myself fit and in shape and healthy for that so that I can have a good result. So putting that on the calendar was definitely highly advised, and I think that you would attest to that as well.
I agree. And having a goal to reach for, and I hate to say this, I think you and I are different, and probably the people that listen to this podcast are a little bit different too, in that, we tend to be athletes with athletic goals or race dreams or whatnot. And you tend to be able to handle pain and discomfort a little bit more than other people do. And I think that's one of the things that makes me good as an athlete, is that I'm not, and most athletes, is that you're just not afraid to suffer or to hurt or to feel pain. And when it comes to rehabbing injuries, that can be detrimental if you're not listening.
There's a word that you just used in there that actually kind of resonates with me on a different frequency, though. The word afraid. Not being able, I'm not afraid to suffer. I'm not afraid to work hard. I'm not afraid to sit in the hurt locker. But since being hit by the car, that word afraid is a little bit different for me. And I don't talk about this too often, but I deal with PTSD all the time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times where I'm like, I could go outside and I could ride right now. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to go out there because I'm going to be by myself. I know that it's a time of day where traffic is a little bit higher. I know that I'm going to have to ride on certain streets. And the thought of getting hit by a car again, it really just doesn't sit well with me. So there's a psychological component to me just opting to go on the trainer as opposed to riding outside on a lot of days. Now, it does change if I'm riding with somebody else. Like if you called me up and it's like 6 o'clock, or we're going to go do the team flogging ride at 6 o'clock, that's a whole different thing. It's like, I don't know why in my brain, safety and numbers really kind of like, it kind of helps appease that. But to go out and ride by myself, it's hard. Now, I will go out and I will force myself to, because sometimes even like on a weekend, if I'm going to go ride by myself, I'll still be dealing with that to a certain degree. And I get on the bike, and less than a minute later, that all kind of subsides, and I'll turn on my Aftershocks headphones and get a little bit of music going. They'll kind of pump me up a little bit, and then it's like, all right, let's go get this done.
Yeah.
And then it'll change things up. But I still deal with that quite a bit, and it bugs the crap out of me because I don't want anything to keep me from wanting to go ride my bike.
Right.
I wish that we could trust all cars, but that's just not the case. And I know that if I ride out on the road, it's probably going to be, a good chance of something sort of run-in happening again. I had an almost run-in with a car. It was about a year after the getting hit by the car. I just narrowly got missed. I got the whole thing on GoPro too.
Yeah.
And that scared the absolute crap out of me. And I couldn't afford to go down either. But in that pops up in my head. Like that's all of my fears are all being like, told, like, you see, I told you that this is going to happen. And, it's like, I don't know. It's just a tough part.
Obviously, cars on the road is something we can't control,
Yeah.
but what you can control is what positions you put yourself on the road, and how well you watch for potential issues coming up.
Yeah, head is totally on a swivel.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking for cars that potentially could turn left in front of me.
Yep.
Cars that are coming towards me, or cars that are passing me. Are they going to try to pass me and try to take a hard right turn because they don't realize I'm going 24 miles an hour and I'm right on their wheel?
Yeah.
So I'm always watching that. If somebody clicks on their, they pass me, a car coming past me from behind, and they have their blinker on, I automatically move to the middle of the road.
Yeah, just take the lane.
Just take the lane, because I'll let them turn so they won't potentially turn in front of me.
I still don't understand the mindset of that. I got to get in front of the cyclist and turn right in front of him. That just makes no sense to me. But anyway, it is what it is.
It's the same thing. You see a car pull up from on the right side, that it's pulling onto your road. I always assume they're just going to pull in front of me, and you just kind of change. You change how you look at things and how cars are coming, and
assume the worst and hope for the best. Just like us, going into the Florida Hill this past weekend when we were doing our ride together. We were coming down that hill, and that car turned off the cross street left into our lane. We had taken the lane. We were coming down doing probably more than the speed limit, and the car turned right in front of us.
It did.
And I probably threw.
And we didn't have a stop sign.
No, a couple choice words maybe,
Yep.
and gosh, dang it, pay attention, open your eyes. But and I saw that car coming and immediately sat up and grabbed brake and just like, I can't believe that this is happening.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to be a close one, but the person did see us at the last second, kind of stop. But
And then they were afraid to pass us.
yeah, because they didn't want to get chastised. So, so there's that, and then another. We can just talk about some crash prevention stuff. Riding in groups is the most fun you'll ever have on a bike.
Correct.
Unfortunately, you don't always ride with the same people all the time.
Right.
And a lot of times, especially in this day and age, there's a lot of new people out there riding bikes that want to come out and enjoy a bicycle ride. And they just don't know the rules yet. They don't know the etiquette or the protocol or things to do. And that's not their fault, because we were all there at some point in time.
Right.
But being able to spot that person early and being able to kind of know kind of what they're at and treating them like you would treat a car, like that person's going to do this, 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 and this, and more times than not they do that.
Yeah.
That's what's going to cause crashes a lot of times. So two-prong approach is be able to address or be able to see that person, but also take the time to teach somebody.
Yeah.
We've got juniors on our team that ask me questions, and there's one of them in particular that has asked me a few questions, and I've let him know that we're going to go take a bike ride and we're going to talk about some stuff so he knows how to deal with certain people that do certain things. But being able to understand different kinds of riders, different kinds of things that they'll do, the newbies that they'll do all the time, they just kind of get this I don't know, they get stuck in like tunnel vision. They're just looking at one thing and they're not fully comprehending all the other people around them and like the movements that they make and how that's going to affect a group.
Right.
Pointing things out. That's just all the little things. So any tips or tricks or suggestions on that front?
It's interesting. All that stuff comes with experience, and it's hard to get the experience without riding in groups,
Yeah.
And when you're riding in a group, you really shouldn't be half-wheeling people. That's a lot of times where you get in trouble is when you're half-wheeling people. Sometimes it's really hard not to half-wheel somebody.
It's just like driving in somebody's blind spot.
Yes.
And if they come out, all of a sudden your wheel gets taken out, you're done.
Yes.
I'm still guilty of that all the time.
Same here.
But I generally do a really good job of like kind of knowing the situation, reading the situation, and knowing the rider. Like if I'm going to half wheel like somebody's probably going to be Lance because I know how Lance is going to react. And it's not that I'm doing it on purpose, but it just sometimes happens. Like the pace will change a little bit and all of a sudden you'll come up a little bit and you're just right there,
right,
half wheeled on the rear wheel.
Okay, well, my wreck 2 weeks ago in this gravel race is funny. There were only 25 of us or something in the group, and there was one guy who was actually riding pretty strong, but within like 5 minutes, I could tell that he didn't have a whole lot of group riding experience. And why did I notice that? His number was pinned on weird. I hate to say this, but it was just a sign that he was newish. Newish to it. His number was pinned on weird. He had something weird strapped to his bike that you wouldn't normally have strapped to race. I don't remember what it was. I think it was a frame pump or something that you normally wouldn't race with. And he wasn't he wasn't holding his line very well. And so within the first 5 or 6 minutes, I realized, okay, he's strong, but that's probably not a wheel I want to be on.
Yeah.
I should try to kind of be somewhere else.
Yeah.
Guess whose wheel I was on when I crashed? His.
Yeah.
It's just the way that
The dynamics
worked out. I was right on his wheel and
It's a card you were dealt.
and it bit me.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I remember seeing it at the beginning thinking, okay, that's not a guy. You kind of figure it out, once you have some experience. And it's hard to get that experience without riding in groups. You have to be able to do that. But those are the things that just take some time to kind of learn to try to keep you safer in certain situations.
Yeah. So there's one thing that I can tell people, if there's one thing that they can take away from that part of this conversation, be predictable.
Yes.
Don't do anything erratic. Don't do anything that's going to be like jolting to the group, because the group becomes kind of like a finely tuned instrument. And if it's played correctly, it can do some fantastic things. It can be a heck of a lot of fun. If you get something in there and things become a little bit dissonant, it's all of a sudden like, it just doesn't, I can feel the group. I can feel like sometimes it's just a little herky-jerky. And that could be just as simple as like, all right, this is my normal group, and there's just 2 new characters in here, and they're writing a little bit differently. Not that it's bad, but just differently. And like you need to get to know that flavor, those ingredients of that group to know whether or not you can trust that group fully or not.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're at there. The other part that I can impart is for people that have a ton of experience writing in groups, please don't yell at people.
Yes.
Don't be an a-hole. Be the good person, step up, teach and educate them.
Yes.
You know, that's going to go so much further as opposed to like chirping at somebody and barking at somebody and kicking them out of the group and making them feel like a lesser of a person. They're new. Like if you're telling the same person for the 5th or 6th time to stop doing something, yes, that's when you can get a little chirpier. Yes, you can go right off the back, or yes, we're going to drop you and you can be your own problem.
Yeah.
Done that before to a couple of people.
Yeah.
I still kind of feel bad about it, but at the same time, it still feels kind of good. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But if you can take the time to teach them, then all of a sudden they're going to come around. They're going to start writing, for lack of a better term, the right way.
Right.
They're going to be predictable, safer.
Yes.
It's going to be more economical, more efficient, and it's going to be more fun. If you can do that for the person, that just makes their experience and your experience all that much better.
Right.
Be the good person. Teach.
Yes.
It will pay huge dividends. So, all right. What else you got, Lance? Anything else you want to talk about on this whole topic before we jump into the other minutia?
No, it's like jinxing to talk about so many wrecking stories.
That has gone through my head as
crashing
well.
stories.
I don't want to like all of a sudden go out and podcast next week, come in with broken stuff.
No more broken stuff.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that was a good topic. It's kind of nice to get that off your chest. It's like we're all dealing with our own little injuries. I know that Evan was dealing with his foot injury from overtraining, and Matt's had his Achilles problem in his shoulder, and you're dealing with your back, and I've got this perpetual problem with my shoulder, and I still feel my hip sometimes when the weather changes. And, I used to ride and race motorcycles, and I've got broken vertebrae and rods in my back. So, I mean, we've got plenty of battle stories and wounds that we can share with everybody. And we've probably, between the whole lot of us, have dealt with just about everything under the sun from, broken bones and torn ligaments and head injuries and the whole gamut. So we've kind of got a little bit of experience there. Just be safe, make good decisions, help each other out, and try and ride with other people whenever you can. Be predictable.
Agree.
A lot of stuff there. Cool. All right, let's jump into let's do the Patreon right now. I want to do the Patreon drawing. Lance is going to jump up and get the little Patreon drawing thing here. For those of you that don't know what the Patreon is, it's just a way that you can help support the show. Patreon is actually what is that, like a website app kind of thing where you can go on there and work with them, and then we have different tiers for people to be a part of the show, and they can support the show, and it's just a couple bucks that you can toss at it. Lance is shaking the little thing here. What we've been doing is putting all of our patrons on here and doing drawings every week, and we've got this whole bin full of all kinds of fun and goodies. And if you've won, we've pulled your name out of there. And Scott Troutman, your name was in there. It's been pulled out because you did win recently.
Yes, you did.
He sent me a text. He's like, I don't think my name's in there. It's because you won. And then once we go through everybody, we will put everybody's names back in there. But if you're interested in becoming a patron, you can go to dialpodcast.com. There is a Patreon link right there on the homepage. Click through, you can find one that works best for you, and then, you can help support the show. So today, we're going to pull a name out. This is going to let me do the honors. I haven't done that in a while. Let's see who it is here. All right, drum roll, please. We have Nathan Skanky.
Nathan Skanky.
Yeah, he's been, we've had him on the podcast before
have.
for a listener lead out.
Yes.
Not lead out, hot lap. That's what it was.
He lives in
Arizona now.
Arizona now?
Yeah.
Yes, doing training for a triathlon.
There you go.
Yeah.
Follow him on Strava and get to see all of his little rides. So,
Yes.
Nathan, give us a shout. We'll go through what is in that bin, and we'll get something shipped over to you so you can you can add that to your, I don't know, triathlon-y stuff maybe. Maybe some pickle juice in there. We'll throw in some pickle juice too. Yeah, there's a bunch of pickle juice in there. It's kind of funny. How about
Champ here. I'm all about having fun.
Pants.
Get a couple
Champ.
cocktails
Pants.
in me, start a fire in someone's kitchen, maybe go to
No
SeaWorld,
fires.
take
No
my
fires.
pants off.
God, you took your pants off again?
Take my
Every time.
pants off.
What's up, champ?
Champ here. We have had some racing. The Giro d'Italia is happening. Evan is not here to
Geek out on it.
geek out on it because it's his favorite race. I'm not sure why. I think it's because he has some Italian heritage, and that's why he likes the Tour of Italy. It has been exciting this week. They did have a mountaintop finish that had a gravel section.
Really?
Yes. Wow. So they had one mountaintop finish with the last 5K on gravel, And Egan Bernal blasted by everybody, won the stage, took over the lead. Yeah.
So he's in the
Maglia Rosa, the pink jersey, the leader's jersey for, and apparently that was his first ever Grand Tour win.
He didn't win any TDF stages when he won the tour?
No, he never won a stage. He was always second or third.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's a good little bit of
So
information.
he's feeling good. There was some drama with the race because Caleb Ewan actually won 2 stages, 2 sprint stages.
Yeah.
Good for him. And then turned around and pulled out.
Why?
He was only planning on doing like the first part of the tour. And then there's, people like
Calling him out for being soft or something?
or for not respecting the race and whatever, blah, 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 whatever. You guys can cram it. And this morning, Peter Sagan won.
Did he really?
In a sprint. He won the stage in a sprint, so good for Peter.
Peter is not done.
No.
I think he's going to do better at the tour this year than everybody gives him credit for. I think that last year was just an off year for like it was for everybody because of COVID reasons, and I think that he's still got some
Pretty exciting.
gas in the tank.
Other exciting news, there was a World Cup mountain bike race in Czechoslovakia or the Czech Republic. What is it called now? It's not Czechoslovakia.
Sure.
Whatever. And on the women's side, fantastic. We had 2 people in the front row, Kate Courtney and Haley Batten, who started in the front row. Actually, the short track race was won by American Haley Batten.
Really?
On Thursday, yes. She out-sprinted everybody and got away. And during the cross-country race on, was it Sunday? I don't know. Anyway, Haley Batten took second.
Nice.
So Kate Courtney, this is crazy. Kate Courtney crashed on like lap 2 of 5, destroyed her rear brake handle, and freaking Brad Copeland, is it Brad Copeland or Brian Copeland? He fixed it in the pit. He changed her hydraulic brake lever in the pit, and she finished the race.
Wait, do they have a pit bike?
No.
So she had to stop while he fixed it.
Yes. I'm not kidding. In like 90 seconds, he pulled off the brake lever with hydraulic fluid in it, put a new one on, didn't have to bleed it.
Did you happen to catch what kind of brake lever it was?
I don't know. She races for Specialized, I believe. So
Because if it's a SRAM with their barb and all of it's the thingamajig and whatchamacallit or whatever,
It might have
the way
been.
that comes apart, you can actually get away with that without having to rebleed it.
he
And
freaking did it in the
get
pit.
yourself a little 8mm deal to loosen that up and pull it off. That's awesome.
That was like the amazing thing of the whole race. And Courtney, of course, she ended up like 20th or
Sure, but
something. But still, he fixed her hydraulic brake lever in the
Yeah.
pit, which was amazing. Anyway, good for Haley Batten. On the men's side, pretty amazing race. Tom Pidcock ran away from it.
Really?
He won by a minute over Matthew Vanderpool.
You know why? BMC 4-stroke.
He was on a BMC 4-stroke. Also, Pidcock desperately trying to get an Olympic spot for Great Britain.
So Vanderpool, how much does he weigh?
He's like 75 kilos,
So he's a little bit bigger of a guy, not
but
huge,
he's,
but like
he's like 6'4" or something like
he's
that.
kind of he's a bigger
tall.
dude. And
Yeah,
Pidcock he's a small little wavy guy.
Pidcock's like 50 kilos.
So-
no, he's not that light.
On
But
a mountain bike course like that, I think that played to his advantage.
Yeah.
And he's got some pretty good bike handling skills to boot. So,
he won by a full minute. Just amazing. Pidcock just rode away from everybody.
you get him on some rollers on a road bike. I mean, that's Vanderpool's
Yeah.
all day long. But the mountain bike stuff, I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So good for him. Good for Thomas Pidcock. He's only 20
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
So those were both exciting races. They're free on Red Bull TV, which you can watch the whole race on Red Bull TV.
Really?
So yeah,
Were they streaming it live?
they did stream it live,
And then the replays you can
and the
still
replays you can still watch.
Where do you go to Red Bull TV? Is it just like their website?
Yeah, it's like redbull.tv or something like that.
Interesting.
I just Googled Red Bull TV and it popped right up. So
Gotcha.
that's kind of exciting. In local stuff, actually, our teammate Paige.
Yep. I was going to hopefully make sure that you were going to say that.
Paige Edwards was at a UCI race in
Wisconsin,
and she made the podium in the elite field. I think she took third.
First pro women race to land on the podium. Got third place.
So just fantastic.
Yep.
So good for Paige. She was super stoked.
Yeah, I saw her Instagram post yesterday when I was riding on the trainer. That's another long story why I was riding on the trainer, but neither here nor there. And I was all excited about that. And it was like literally like moments later, her dad's like shooting me a text with pictures. She won
on the podium.
Yeah, I'm
She
like,
didn't win.
that's
She's on the podium.
awesome. But yeah, that's a big feeling right there.
yeah.
She's a high school senior, 18 years old. You know, got her whole life ahead of her, and she's already landing on the pro podium.
Yeah,
Not my
fantastic.
crazy. Love
So,
it. Job, Paige.
Super happy
Proud
for
of you.
her. Other than that, I don't know. Nothing.
How did our teammates do at the Vance Creek Road Race? I know it was Ian, and I think it was only one other person that showed up.
Chris Hitchcock and Ian.
Yeah.
And actually Ed Dudnick.
Ed Dudlick.
Ed Dudlick.
He showed up as well.
He did. He went and raced the Cat 5 race because he hasn't done any road
Oh,
racing.
okay.
Funny enough, it's Cat 5, so you really never know what to expect. He's still learning how to road race. He ended up going off the front for like 4 miles solo, and that's generally not how you win a Cat 5 road race. So he ended up getting caught and finished mid-pack. But,
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good on him though for going out there and starting to
Yes, for sure.
earn his stripes.
Ian.
Strong as heck. Too.
Yeah, Ian Gibson was out there in the 40-plus field.
Sure.
He ended up mid-pack as well. He was part of the race, not where the other guy crashed, but that got held up by the crash, where there was some discrepancy. But Ian did great. He had a good time.
Yep.
He ended up mid-pack. And then Hitchcock didn't complete the race. I don't exactly know what the deal is. It looks like he pulled out after 3 or 4 laps.
Yeah, I know that he was really keen on trying to help Ian out as much as he possibly could.
Yeah.
So
and after the crash, I don't know exactly what happened, but I haven't talked to Hitchcock about that. But
Gotcha.
kind of exciting. They got out there and had some fun.
Yeah.
So.
And this is just a little public broadcast announcement. Ian wants more of our teammates to come race with him.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, he was. He let me know about that yesterday, and I know that it was kind of a tough race for people to get into. It was.
I was planning on being there. I got shut down.
Yeah.
So, but that's okay.
Yeah, I thought it was on Saturday. It was on Sunday the
was
whole
on
time,
Sunday.
and it just wasn't going to work for me to go on Sunday.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll get more teammates out there. I promise. But
Yeah.
there was only so many slots, and people they did open up a few slots, kind of not last minute, but pretty like deep in or pretty close to the race, and it just wasn't going to work out for a lot of folks to get up there. So
Correct.
we need more racing here in our backyard.
do.
Dang it. So
For it.
cool. I think that's it, Lance.
Yeah, that's enough.
Is that enough?
Champ Bailey out.
See you, champ. Thanks. Appreciate it. All right, one last thing. You got any one last thingers?
No, I'm gonna try to be good.
You're going to try and be good.
Yeah.
Operative word? Try.
Try.
Yeah. How do you think that's going to work out?
I don't know. I don't know what
When
the
is
crap
this-
I'm doing.
2 weeks up, then, and you're going back to see the doc.
By the end of this week, I'll know if I need to have an MRI or not. And then the MRI will show.
Is that all just based on symptoms, whether or not you're going to
Yes.
go? Okay, and it's leaning towards not needing an MRI
Yes,
right now.
it's leaning towards that.
So you'll be at the flogging ride? No. Yes, maybe.
I don't think the flogging ride's a good idea for me this week.
What if we got you an e-bike?
I would do the flogging ride on an e-bike, although our e-bikes have a governor
Yeah,
on
we
them.
got a friend.
And we'd have to take the governor off for me to stay
No,
with
no.
the group.
Just borrow David Root's bike.
I could borrow David Root's bike. It just doesn't have a governor on it.
Or listener Scott Troutman owns this moped.
Oh, yes, I could
You could
cruise
come
on
out
the
and just
moped.
like heckle all of us
and film.
and film. That could be fun.
That could be fun.
That could be a lot of fun. Stay tuned. One last thing for me. I don't know if I really have a one last thing. I just right now it's just kind of weird times. We're kind of busy. We've got a new hand here in the shop. Looking at him right now. He's over there working on the bike name.
Paul, why don't you come say hi?
Paul, you want to jump
No.
on and come say? Paul's a little shy behind the camera, so good dude. But I'm really excited about him being here to be able to help out. He's A, doing a great job, and B, it's going to afford me a little bit more time to get a lot of other stuff done. And more importantly, be able to get back to people in a timely manner. And I
Yes.
know that there's a lot of people that are inquiring about the team, and people have questions, and there's just so many things going on right now. There's a lot of moving parts, so that's going to allow me to do more of that, which I'm super excited about. So I guess I'm just thankful.
We're thankful for Paul.
Yeah, it's good times. So, and Lance is going to be in town for a little while. as well, so he'll be down here helping me out. I think
Yes.
maybe until you take off and go to Florida.
There's a chance I'm gone for a full month or more.
Oh my gosh!
In July and part of August. Yeah, I might be driving across the country and back and adventuring a little bit.
Fun.
So
we'll be here holding it down. So. All right, we do appreciate everybody listening and watching. If you're listening to this on the audio version, you can always go check out the stream version on YouTube, youtube.com/dialed cycling. If you want to see what's going on in the studio here today, was a little off because it was just mostly me and Lance, but we still got some stuff going.
It's all good.
Covered today. It was good.
Yeah.
And if you are watching it on YouTube, thank you very much for watching. We will have a guest coming up here pretty soon. We're not going to disclose names yet, but
we're efforting.
yeah,
We're efforting for some guests.
Pretty big name that might come on. We're going to try and get a few others too. So
Yes.
should be fun. Stay tuned. But anyhow, thank you for listening and watching. We will see you all next week. Until then, bye for now.